Hello, my friends. How you been? I'm Jorge Flefel, the founder of Archi Group. Archi Group is a non-profit organization that represents the way we think that we have been driven. We don't know where we're going to. We rely on our master. We trust in his guidance. We're going to be presenting to you a series of discoveries related to the most amazing thing that everybody that believe in the Bible were hoping to be found. We're going to talk about the Ronald Wyatt discoveries and something else also. We're going to be talking about sciences and archaeological finds that prove the Bible. We're going to prepare the scenario first. With the first presentation will be creation and flood. And after that, maybe we're going to see Noah's Ark, the Red Sea crossing. And after that, at the other side of the Red Sea crossing, we're going to talk about and we're going to see the split rock, for example. We've been the rock of Horeb, no? We've been singing to that rock. You want to watch it? You're going to see it. You're going to be there. You're going to be with us going to visit the place. Okay, be prepared. And also we're going to see the real Mount Sinai, where the tables of stone, the law was given. Also, we're going to be talking about the Mount Horeb, which is at the very side of Mount Sinai, and many other things, including the real tomb of Jesus Christ, and the exact place where he was crucified, and the related things to that, as the Ark of the Covenant. Also, we're going to be talking about new discoveries related to the city of Bethlehem, or Hebron, where the real tomb of the patriarchs, remember Abraham and his wife, Jacob and Isaac, all were put in the same grave. We will see that. Many other things. Well, prepare. You're most welcome to this, the first presentation of the series What God Discovers. This original name of the series was inspired in the fact that our achievements are not because of human intervention or because of our own capacities or skills, but instead we have to recognize that it was God Himself who has removed the veil, the way that we can see the hidden evidences in archaeology and in sciences. Please be prepared and ready to start, which for many will be the most revealing experience of their lives.
Archi Group. Series, When God Discovers, is presenting Creation and Flood.
Okay, my friends. So, we will talk about revelations. But the first thing to mention is that tradition is generally opposed to revelation. Even Jesus himself, when he was confronting the rabbis, he says to them in the Matthew chapter 15, verse 6, "Ye have made void the word of God because of your tradition." It demonstrates the power of tradition, that even religious people of that time opposed to his most holy book because of tradition.
We get used to tradition, especially if it was practiced by our ancestors, and we have been used to it from childhood, then it is even painful to stop practicing it. It could be even a ridiculous tradition, but somehow, we find meaning on it. The problem is that religious traditions generally start off well, since they are practiced to give life to some principles, but, with the passing of years, people begin to add or change things, until it becomes so distorted, at the degree that it opposed to revelation. Today, we have many traditions in our own lives, and in different spheres, and we are not even aware of it. For example, the traditional theory of evolution, which has no scientific proof, and many scientists that have realized about the truth, do not dare to oppose to it, for fear of losing even their reputation. That is the power of tradition. Many people use the tradition to even make a malicious use of it. Like magicians use to enchant people, and the devil knows how to take the best advantage of it. It is because of a special feature of the human brain that has been trained to follow patterns. To demonstrate this, we will do the following exercise, developed by Edward Adelson. The sheet shown on the screen corresponds to a kind of board, with a green cylinder, and a letter A on a dark square, and a letter B in a light square. Please have a deep look to the picture, and prepare to give answers to the following questions. What about if I tell you that the cylinder is red? What would be your answer? If you accept that the cylinder is red color, then, you would accept anything I say. Sorry, but you cannot be a person of trust. What about if I tell you that the letters A and B have a similar color? It is something that could be possible. It could be subjected to your individual visual perception. But, what about if I tell you that the dark square, where was placed the letter A, has the same color of the light square of letter B? What would be your answer? I am sure that your answer will be, no. It is impossible. But if I beg you to believe me? Your answer will be again a firm, no. Then, I have to demonstrate to you that your visual perception is playing games in your brain. Let's hide the pattern, that is tradition does, is deceiving your visual perception. What would be your answer now? Can you trust your brain? Some people that are stubbornly insisting that those colors are different, may think that I may be changing the picture while covering the pattern. It is not so. Then to prove it, please see the following video that I got from YouTube. It is not exactly the same, but it gives a similar result.
Incredible. What do you think now? Can you trust your brain? Why we have been chosen?
Why we have been chosen? The answer is not because of our own capacity or wisdom, but it is found in the book of Luke chapter 10 verse 21. In that same hour he was full of joy in the Holy Spirit and said, I give praise to you, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have kept these things secret from the wise and the men of learning, and have made them clear to little children, for so, O Father, it was pleasing in your eyes.
Can you understand? That's why God does not reveal to the wise and learned. He revealed his secrets to the children. Then how do you need to act to have access to the revelation of God? To be as children. What I mean with that? Well, you need to ask God. Do your little prayer and he will let you know.
As we saw, God is pleased to hide his secrets from the wise and learned, but he is also pleased to reveal it to his children. That is, we and our children have the privilege of discovering revolutionary things, But we must give credit to God in this, because He is the one who has drawn the veil so that we can see them, and it is not some special capacity that we have developed. To be honest, in my experience as an engineer, I have had the privilege of reading about many inventors, and I have even managed to meet some of them in person, but I have not found an inventor who does not recognize that his invention was not a revelation. The famous case of Tesla, or the great Isaac Newton, nicknamed the father of physics, was a great student of the scriptures, wrote several books on the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. Why did the theory of evolution arise and was so easily accepted by the vast majority? Visible reasons. 1. Response to a corrupt and depraved medieval religious system, which had eliminated even the free will. 2. Accruals for 1,260 years. 3. Assume that this had been the result of following biblical beliefs. 4. Manipulation of information, misrepresenting basic concepts. The papal system was consolidated in 538 AD, but faithful Christians opposed to it for centuries, spreading the correct biblical teachings, weakening the papacy until 1798 AD. Napoleon took away the authority of the Pope. And so the Protestants consolidated civil and religious freedom in the West. But, today they are under threat again.
Yes, of course. This medieval environment make many people to believe that the science, which oppose sometimes to the biblical belief, they were thinking it was biblical belief because it was not. It was the corrupted religious system that was imposing many things, including the free will. They forbid the free will. Understand? That's why when they, for example, when they noticed that the earth was moving around the sun, they were saying, wow, it's not the earth the center of the universe. Then they went against the teachings from the church. Many people died because of that. It was not the French Revolution. It was Christian Revolution, because the good Christian wanted to believe in the Bible, keeping the Bible, and following the teaching of Jesus Christ that revealed to the system. They give a heavy time to the church, then they weaken the church at the degree that Napoleon took the power of the church, or took the control of the church at that time till today. So, an academic like Charles Darwin toured the world and found something like the following. Oh, very weird species, animals. You can see, for example, this is not a cat and not a dog, something in between. Also, wow, look at this. So weird, no? Very strange animals. This was like evolving to be a giraffe. Wow, it's a deer. Very, very strange animals. Look at that. Look, this has big teeth, like the sable tiger. Wow. Look, this cow looks like a sheep. Very different animals. Because the middle aged people were living in a bubble. When they went out and see the world, they found many different things, unexpected, and they start thinking, wow, there must be evolution. And it was applause. Why? Because everybody was expecting to have motives to be against the church. And they found it. Look, these long legs.
This state of mind that has been projected until today, has made those who share evolutionary ideas continue to make extreme and even dogmatic efforts to defend their theories, and any initiative that proves otherwise is rejected. Basically, they are emotional and non-rational reasons, motivated for the reasons previously stated.
But today, many of the most important people defending the evolution, or atheists, are recognizing that they were wrong. This is the case, for example, of this person, very famous person, Anthony Flew. Let's listen to this.
Anthony Flew, syndicated as the most prominent and loyal atheist of the 20th century, a famous English intellectual who dedicated his life to the spread of atheism, at the end of his life, retracted himself. We quote, "It is as if the universe knew we were coming. It has been calculated that, if the value of only one of the fundamental constants had been very slightly different, no planet would have been formed, capable of allowing the evolution of human life. And the only possible explanation for such fine-tuning is due to divine design."
Yes, sometimes when you do just a simple view or a first sight of a scientific argument, you can maybe believe in evolution or other things. But when you go deeper, you found that it's not evolution, that is creation, confirming the Bible. Let's see some evidences now ahead. What about, for example, the famous Noah's Ark? It is a very large ship, very large. It has a length 157 meters long, and width it has 26 meters width, and the height is 16 meters height. And it's supposed to be in the Mount Ararat. Many people have been there looking for it and have found nothing. Even one expedition of Russian scientists went there and they said that there was a Noah's Ark in that area, should be under hundreds of feet of lava, because all this is lava that surround this area. What is the explanation then? Well, I pointed to the same text I read before, no? That God himself is hiding these things to the wise and learned and revealing it to the child. And what about those dimensions? Are those correct? Let's hear this.
The original measurements of Noah's Ark were given in cubits, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high. We used the 52.3 centimeters cubit, because this was the dimension of the Hebrew cubit, until before the division of Israel, that is, until Solomon they used this cubit. Later the Jews use a shorter cubit, of 45 centimeters long. This is the reason why some people are confused today. They use the modern cubit, when they should use the oldest, since Moses, who was the writer of the book of Genesis, and it was long before Solomon. And by the other hand, Moses was educated in Egypt. And the cubit we use, we have been able to demonstrate to be correct, by taking the measurements of artifacts from that period.
Yeah, it's a proven fact. This is the one of the measurements found in some of the graves of Egypt. This is the cubit they use, that's the name, and those is from the elbow to the tip of the fingers. And the Hebrews use a shorter cubit when they close the hand. Why then the ark has not been found there, meaning the Mount Ararat? Just because of tradition. If we read the Bible, it mentions in Genesis chapter 8, verse 4, and on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains, plural, of Ararat. Not a mountain, mountains, plural. Then it shows that tradition is wrong. It was not a mountain of Ararat at that time. The Mount Ararat is from volcanic formation, of recent formation. The last eruption was in 1848. In the north side, this picture shows that was not even snow there. But it was easy to look for the ark in that place. But because of surrounded by lava, it's impossible to find the ark in this site. And also, because of the volcanic formation, it was of recent formation, and maybe that area was a lot lower and raises because of the eruption of the volcano, like Mount St. Helens, which erupted and changed all its surrounding environment. It's the modern eruption. How many days did the flood lasted? Many of you will say 40. Are you sure? Well, if we read the Bible, the 40 days were only the days that rained. The heavy rain lasted for 40 days, but the real duration of the flood was more than 370 days. It started on the year 2348 before Christ and lasted for 1 year. What about these dates? Are accurate?
Some people has made the following question: how did you calculate those dates? Is it possible to do it with the information we have, or are they approximate? We answer, these dates were calculated from the information that exists in the Holy Scriptures and with the support of relevant archaeological and historical information. Furthermore, we have the tools today to demonstrate academically that these dates are accurate. This table shows a summary of the events involved in the flood process that began in 2348 BC, when Noah was 600 years old, and ended the following year. We are talking about 4,367 years ago, counting from today, year 2020. The flood began on the 17th day of the second month. It rained torrentially for 40 days, and for 150 days the waters did not go down. Then we will understand why the waters could not go down. So, on that day, God began to blow a wind over the earth, and the waters gradually began to be drawn, and the ark perched on the highest peak in the Ararat region. And as we saw earlier, for this reason, it is that tradition states that the ark must be on Mount Ararat, since this is the highest peak in that area. In 74 more days, that is to say 224 days counted from the beginning of the flood, only the tops of the mountains became visible. So, Noah waited for another 40 days and started sending the birds. Then on the 314th day the waters dried up, and then for what reason Noah did not come out of the ark? Rather, he waited for almost 2 more months, or 56 days. Here we have an important clue. What happens when the wind extracts large amounts of water? Why do mothers not let their children keep wet clothes unless if the wind blows? What happens if you get completely wet and exposed to the wind? You get a cold, right? Why? There is a well-known principle in thermodynamics, called enthalpy of evaporation, which explains that when an element passes from its liquid phase to gas, or evaporates, then it cools, or is capable of absorbing large amounts of energy. This is the basic principle of refrigeration systems. Therefore, the fact that a large amount of water has evaporated must necessarily have caused an ice age. Something very interesting, because coincidentally, scientists have shown, by geological, chemical and paleontological findings, that there was a global glaciation, which many call the Ice Age, because of the famous films created by Blue Sky Studios and released by 20th Century Fox. What we thank God for, because He has allowed the ground to be prepared, so that we can spread this concept universally. The evidence for a universal glaciation is overwhelming, but the explanation of how it happened remains a mystery. Not so for us, who know the Word of God. This is a common thing that will happen during this presentation, where scientists shrug their shoulders at what they consider a mystery. We will smile at the explanation. Is what the Bible announces referring to this topic being fulfilled? We can read in Romans chapter 1, verse 22, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. It is not wise to oppose revelation. So, the reason why Noah did not come out of the ark, despite being all dry, but instead waited 2 more months to just come out of the ark, was because the outside environment was still very cold. And what he did to remove the cover of the ark, must not have been such, but actually removed the ice that covered the ark. This is demonstrated by the application of the Hebrew word miksa, which mainly refers to what is covered by something, instead of the idea of cover or ceiling.
Wow, maybe it was too much information for one slide, but it's important to recognize that for many things that scientists cannot explain, we have the best explanation in the Bible. The glaciation was not because of a meteorite pulling dust and avoiding the sun to come in the earth because it produces a warming effect. Understand? They talk about greenhouse effect. Then what produces the glaciation? The Bible is mentioning that God needed to take all this water out. Then it blew a very heavy wind that dried the land. And what happened with this is the frozen effect. That's the explanation of the glaciation. The Bible explained it. For us, it's not something unexplained. But for the scientists, they just do like that and they don't know how to explain it. They try, but they cannot. Keep going. What about these Aboriginal references to a great flood? There are many, more than 200 dots you can see there that are representing many, many different cultures in the world. In Australia, for example, New Zealand, or in Chile, in South America, or North America, you can see most of the Aborigines from all of those countries, Africa, Japan, everywhere in the world, they talk the same thing. We come from a great flood, from a family that was saved in a boat. What is that? Many will think it's a coincidence, but it's not.
I guess that even the Aborigines of your own country too. But since this story was transmitted orally, it has many distortions and different versions. But everyone recognizes that it was the sea that rose and flooded almost all the mountains. Scholars spent years gathering literary history about Noah's Ark. Aaron Smith found 80,000 writings in 72 languages about the universal flood. Some people suggested that it was the result of the preaching of the gospel universally made by early Christians, but how come the Aborigines could remember the flood and not remembering about Jesus?
There is only one explanation for the tremendous amount of fossils we found everywhere in the world. Millions upon millions of fossils underground. Well, contradictory, some try to explain this with millions of years of historical disasters, but evidence confirms that it was the result of a global flood, massive global flood. That's why we have so many fossils around the world. This is the only correct explanation. For example, these kind of evidences have been found in the top of the mountain. Why? A fish in the top of the mountain? Yes, because of the tectonic movement. No, it's all around the world, in places where it was not supposed to be a sea or a river. This big fish was eating a small fish and is found in the top of the mountain. It's because a flood came and with mud and suddenly buried this fish. Look at this. Now I need a little bit of intelligence from you, but you need to think as a baby or as a child. Those are dinosaur footprints. Yeah. But the question is, what kind of material is this? Some people say, well, it's mud. Another says, no, no, it could be ashes. No, I said. I've been in large audiences and no one adult can get it. But some kids, they look at this and they answer immediately, and they found the answer very rapidly.
Please, remember that God only likes to reveal himself to children, so I recommend that you start thinking like children. It is the only way you can answer this question. I have been presenting this topic for many years and also to large audiences, and surprisingly only young children give the correct answer.
You get it now?
Yes, it is cement, and of the best quality. And why are children so right? Well, the answer is simple: we always walk on the concrete made of cement, and the children watch, and see how the animals have left their tracks on it. But we adults are assailed by the prejudices of tradition. Our minds make us reject the idea that the antediluvians used or even knew about cement. Then, they will ask themselves, what? How is it possible that these traces are found in this cement? Could it be that the antediluvians were paving a street when dinosaurs passed by? We will answer this question shortly. Let's look at the following slides.
In Toro, Bolivia, we have the same kind of footprints of dinosaurs. This is one Chilean archaeologist who was visiting there. This is in Texas, and this little child using it as a swimming pool because it's a large footprint. Under shallow waters of a river in Texas. Look, also very sharp. Why? We'll see later. Look, cement. Look, there's a heavy vegetation, but here is not because in the cement the vegetation does not grow. Look, most of the footprints are going up there.
A student asked this teacher why all these traces were going upwards. He really did not know how to respond, but simply said what the scientific tradition affirms, that most likely this floor was horizontal and that over the years it rose.
And he was wrong, because all in this, everywhere in all the places, the same situation. Look at this in Colorado and in Bolivia, in Potosí.
And in Chile we have also found some of it in several places. In the following plate the same type of footprints are shown in the famous thermal springs del Flaco, near the city of San Fernando.
Look, you have footprints here, footprints that way. I went to that place, but it was all covered with snow at that time. It's incredible. Look here, double footprints. Both animals walking together. Look, it's a cement, very good quality cement. Look at this one. Look, very large, as you can see. Even there is a dinosaur stampede national monument. You can see many of those footprints everywhere in the world. And here, the most amazing ones are located in Potosí, Bolivia. One footprint here. We're gonna go and see a close-up here. There you can see. Very nice. Very well preserved. Look. Incredible. Look at here. I'm very well inclined, very difficult to go there, but you will understand why it happened. Look in here. Wow. Potosí, Bolivia. It's a good picture here. Good one. You can see that there's more than one animal was walking, maybe to save himself. And how it happened? Let's listen.
To explain how this cement layer was formed, we will necessarily have to simulate the events narrated in the Holy Scriptures and apply a little intelligence. The Bible tells us that before the flood it did not rain on earth, but instead a steam rose daily that moistened all the vegetation, with the water necessary for it to be absorbed by the plants. And do you know why it had to be this way? Well, because of the salts. Since these are diluted with water, so if excess water falls, then the salts are swept away. We are talking about the chlorides, nitrates, sulfates and all the soluble salts that are fundamental for the life, which nowadays where it rains, are taken to the rivers and then to the sea. That is why the sea is increasingly salty and the land less and less fertile. And where it does not rain or where the water cannot escape to the sea, there are excess salts, such as in the salt flats of northern Chile or in the famous Dead Sea.
Yeah, that's what's important to keep the environment of the pre-flood, but because of the sin, it was destroyed. All this harmonic situation. Look what happened now.
Then, with this torrential rain, all land vegetation along with the first layers of soil were first swept away, until the bedrock became visible in the mountains. And among the types of rocks, the softest, which can be dissolved with torrents of water, is precisely limestone, with which cement is made. Therefore, the last layers of alluvium in those 40 rainy days were necessarily cement layers. Is this riddle better clarified? That is why these footprints are so abundant and found throughout the world. Well, the flood was a worldwide flood.
Understood? Limestone. Limestone dissolved produced this kind of cement as the last layer. But why this heavy rain didn't
The ark was built
erase
by Noah, but the architect was
footprints?
our creator. In the presentation where we will talk about Noah's Ark, we will see in detail the impressive characteristics of this ship that corresponds to the first mentioned in all of human history.
Yep.
To understand why this rain that was so powerful did not erase the traces of these footprints made of fresh cement, we will again have to go to the Holy Scriptures, simulate the events narrated and apply a little more intelligence. The question we must ask ourselves is when the animals were forced to climb the mountains? Because they saw how the waters advanced? Or rather because the waters reached their necks? That is why the tracks were not erased, because the torrential rain could not reach these footprints that were several meters submerged in the water. Well, wonderfully, this answer has been confirmed by the same scientists who deny the biblical flood. This is clearly seen in the following pictures published by those scientists who unknowingly are working for us.
Here you can see. Well, this is a very great explanation why those footprints were not erased by the rain, the heavy rain. Okay, you can read here. This is a reconstruction of the theropod dinosaurs, peculiar footprints, the tracks found in Galator. A better picture is here now. Can you see? The rain couldn't reach the bottom of this cement, but the animals were trying to get to the higher point and trying to swim or stepping on this cement. That cement needs no oxygen to get firm. It needs just water.
We should also find human footprints. Let's see the following pictures.
That's the most important thing, because if we found human footprints in the same layer of these animals, it will prove that the Bible is right, and maybe we are wrong, or maybe the evolutionists are wrong. Wow, very, very large footprint at the same layer of the dinosaur footprint in the same kind of cement. But look, this is a normal size of a foot of a man or a woman. But look, this is nearly triple of the size. I mean, this guy should have been 4.5 meters high. Wow. Some are small like this. It should be a child. But in the same kind of cement, It's dark here because it's wet. They put in water. Look here, human footprint inside a dinosaur footprint. This is a lady footprint here. Maybe you cannot see. I will show you later. And there. This is like a footprint of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. But inside, what this woman following this dinosaur. Or maybe it was a domestic animal and she was in some way trapped or tied to this animal because she needed to be safe and using the animal to escape. Yeah, that's why they found hundreds of footprints of animals, large animals, with footprints of humans following the tracks. They were fled together. They were running for their lives. But they cannot be this way because the storm or the water was so heavy coming in the opposite direction that the people not to be wiped needed to be tied to those animals, maybe with ropes or mounting those animals like a horse. There's many footprints we found, and you can have models, take samples of it, and do some research. In Texas, also in Glen Rose, they found these very large footprints of a human, and at the same site, they found footprints of a Brontosaurus. The only problem we have is the human footprint is 54.61 centimeters long, very long, more than the elbow or the cubit. This is the largest shoe we have today, maybe of one of the basketballists, but now we know that they were even larger than this. Look at this one. This footprint was found in South Africa, in Benghazi. And this person was impressed, thinking it must be a footprint of God, they call it, and a giant. And he thinks it's millions years ago. No, it is confirming the Bible. Let's listen to this person.
We are at the famous site of the giant footprint, or the footprint of God, here near Mphaluzi in South Africa, very close to the Swaziland border. Now this is one of the greatest examples of an ancient footprint, a giant footprint about 4 feet high, in rough granite. It's between 200 million and 3 billion years old. That's what geologists will tell you. I'm going to just take you, if you follow me, up to the top, where it's imprinted against the side of the rock, which means it's been around for so long that the tectonic plates and the movements have actually pushed it up.
That's right, because it's a small stone.
It's quite spectacular, so just walk with me and I'll show you. I don't know of any other example of a footprint in rock that is as amazing as this. And this should be drawing 20 million tourists to South Africa every year. And nobody knows about it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, you're right. Look, the consistency of the earth there, which is it's like the mud of brown color. That's why this cement was colored that way.
Let's get closer.
You can see it's very large compared with the size of the person. 4 feet high, so.
Beautiful. Look at this. There's the, you know, when you, there's the big toe, and the other 4 toes down to the small toe, down to the heel. What's fascinating about this is anybody that does a study of this will notice this piece sticking out here. It's like when you put your foot in mud and you pull it out, your toes will lift up.
Good.
A little mud where your toes were, and that's exactly what seems to have happened here. This rough granite is just, it's pulled up.
It's not granite.
This overhang here, it's
It
spectacular.
is cement.
And I see
It's
that people
limestone.
have been visiting here because they've been leaving little coins here, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Maybe just come closer and show this from more close up.
Wow.
Okay. Well, I don't know who else has filmed this, but I think we'll put this up for everybody to see, for everyone to really appreciate this as a spectacular bit of human history. There were giants on Earth.
Yeah, you're right. There were giants on Earth. But there were thus pre-flood people. All were giants. Not only people, also the animals and also the plants. Everything was giant. According with the Bible, it's confirmed. Look at this. This is a child handprint on Cretaceous rock.
It is thought to be of a child and giant, due to the simple fact that as adults we generally cannot open our fingers as much.
Incredible. Look at this one.
In order for this finger to retain its shape and skin color, it shows that it was subjected to great pressure and a very fast process, that is, it was buried by floods.
It's a finger of a pre-flood woman, and it preserved the color and the shape. It needed very rapid action and a very strong flood. When they break it, they found inside the calcium remains of the phalange, proving that it was in fact a finger. Look at this one. This is more than double of the size of the normal phalange of an adult. Four inches long. Incredible. Now you'll see this at the Ronald Wyatt Museum.
Giant bones. Antediluvian human phalanges. Here's more. And this is interesting, those bones correspond to the fingers of giants, to phalanges of giants. With my hand there you will be able to appreciate the difference in size. This is at the Ronald Wyatt Museum in Nashville, Tennessee. Phalanges of a giant woman, believed to belong to Noah's wife. This is not fossilized, I ask. This obviously happened after the flood. Mary Nell is explaining. She says that once in 1988 or 89, it is not well remembered what people went with, but they were where the grave of Noah's wife was, the one that had been excavated and stolen. They were looking for pieces of the tombstone that had been there, when one of the women said that it seemed that someone was eating chickens around there. But in that area chickens are not consumed. People consume other types of animals. However, Ron Wyatt sneakily took these bones and put them away. He showed them to the people with whom he worked, and now she has recently had them reviewed. For what the specialists assure that these are definitely human bones. And they are not fossilized, so they are very fragile. They are the bones of someone who survived the flood and was buried there in his depth. two doctors claim, and she doesn't know if she's ordering them the right way. They say that one of these bones, instead of corresponding to part of a finger, in this position, could possibly correspond to a bone of the hand, in this position. Therefore we are not sure if it goes there in the hand or here in the finger. Ron believed that these were the bones of Noah's wife, simply because of where they found it.
Incredible, no? Well, I got the privilege to be there and film this. She was very good to me, and she was very happy to share that evidences with our organization. It was good, no? Many years ago it happened. Look at this. This is a very large jaw that was found in the same spot, I mean in the grave of Noah's wife.
Unfortunately, the remains of Noah's wife were apparently sold to different places of tourist attraction in Turkey itself, in the vicinity of the place. The photo, as I recall, was taken in a showcase of a hotel in the area.
Look at this one. This is cup, very large one, and with a very large human skull. And people think that we evolved. It's a petrified human skull. It shows that the men were even at the same size of today's men, or maybe larger. We are not evolving. We are evolving. This is a giant human femur found in Turkey. When we projected this to a human being, it pertained to a very large human being of more than 4.5 meters high. This is presented in this Mount Blanco Fossils Museum.
Projecting this femur, it is estimated that the owner must have had around 4.5 meters of height.
Look at this one. This was found in Saudi Arabia. We know that in Saudi Arabia, many people were put to death there because of the Israelites. When they passed through this area, they at least fight against two kingdoms that were giants. Even the dimension is given of one of the beds of these kings, and it's larger than 3 meters. That's kind of the people we found here. We found skeletons of giants in Alaska, also in Ireland, also were found in New York. Look at this. These two skeletons found in China. This is a species of gibbons, monkeys, which today measure something like 60 centimeters. Now look, 2 meters high. This proves that they're not evolving, but involving, reducing in size, not growing in size. The sandbank in Ica, Peru, hundreds of bones of humans remains together with hundreds of bones of dinosaurs. They were living together. It was proof they died together. This was very well certified by Dr. Javier Cabrera Darquea. We can write to him and ask for better pictures. Look, that's the relationship we have now. The normal human today's men with those, comparing with those dinosaurs from the past. Very big difference. But if we use the size of the person, of the height of the person of pre-flood, it's not much difference. It's similar like the relation we have today with the elephant, for example.
In the Bible, at least 2 giant animals are mentioned, The behemoth that we believe was the brontosaurus in the figure where it is compared to a man in Leviathan, which we will see in the next slide,
is the Tyrannosaurus rex.
We believe that the Leviathan would correspond to the Tyrannosaurus rex. What's more, we also believe due to the special formation that this dinosaur has in its nostrils, which possibly expelled fire and smoke at will from its mouth. Platinum mineral has been found in his teeth, and this is a catalyst that manages to ignite the methane fumes, which come from the digestion of food. The description of these animals is found in chapters 40 and 41 of the Book of Job, and the mention made by the Book of Isaiah of Leviathan is only allegorical. At heart he is comparing him, the true king of the jungle on earth, with the main angel in heaven. The latter lied with his mouth, while the former threw fire through his. In other words, the tortuous serpent is Satan.
Yeah, understand the comparison. Okay, what about atmospheric carbon-14? Well, the carbon-14 is used to measure the age of fossils, but it's not exact. It's very hard to find an exact measurement with this, the current stage of the carbon. The carbon needs to be 12, not 14. It's because of the radiation it emits. It was produced in the atmosphere because of the nocive rays coming from the sun. And today we have this and it's constant. Why? Because pre-flood there was no radioactive carbon. It was because the Earth, when it was created, was protected and surrounded with ice. Then the nocive rays coming from the sun crashes with this ice and was divided, never reached the inside, like it happened in planet Saturn. Saturn has no radiation inside because of this effect, because it's protected with rings of ice. Similar situation that used to be on Earth. But that water was the one that produces the Great Flood. Okay, we will see later. Then, because God created the earth first, protected it, at the first day, he created the sun and the stars. And the sun couldn't reach nocively the earth. Then it was protected. That's why the radiation on earth was minimal. But because of the flood, the radiation started increasingly in this exponential curve till today is nearly constant. That's why people assume, modern scientists assume that this line was all constant till the beginning of time, which is not right. That's the assumption, make them to have wrong measurements. And most of, nearly all the measurements of the age of the find of fossils or the age of Earth are based in radioactive measurements of decay. Many animals could not survive because of the changing of the environment and this new situation. That's why most of them have been extinguished. What happened to the man's life expectancy from creation? Well, according to the Bible, men used to live nearly 1,000 years before the flood. But because of sin, there was a reduction. You can read in the Bible and take the information from there, and you will see that this was the tendency. Well, it's supposed that till today we should be living more than 800 years. Well, according with the thanatologists, which are the doctors who study the causes of death, and some of them have estimated that if there were no harmful radiation that our planet receives mainly from the sun, men could live more than 800 years, exactly what the Bible is explaining of the pre-flood people. But because of the flood, look what happened. This was the first tendency, no? It should be more than 800 years till today. But because of the flood, the environment changes heavily, then the expectancy of life was reduced till middle age, where people was dying of no more than 40 years old, 35 years old or 45, no more than that. But after that, because of the Christian Revolution, not French Revolution, Christian Revolution, it started a new development because people wanted to share what they discovered. That's what the Christian spirit of helping the people, inventing things to make life easier and simpler, good food, also hygiene, etc. Now increasing in style of life and life expectancy. Now the young people expect to live nearly 100 years in average. Comparing with this, we think there is evolution, but it's not evolution. We need to talk about involution because most of the beasts or the animals before the flood were even larger. You can see the elephants were larger. Rhinos were giants, very large animals. Some of them even were terrific. And look at this one, even with the spikes at the tail. Why?
We already know that the antediluvians had intelligence and capabilities far superior to ours. Therefore, I have no doubt that if men today have the ability to manipulate genetics, surely the antediluvians did. That would explain the reason why some species found had real weapons on their tails, such as the spines of the stegosaur.
Oh, incredible. They were very intelligent, more intelligent than us, a lot more intelligent. And if we have conquering the modern science, why they didn't? They used to have hundreds of years to study medicine, to study another career. Not like us that we need to study in 10 years, no more than that. They were very large animals, looking like trees. Even in the seas, there were many large animals, but those were affected also because of the involution, not evolution. Even they changed the name of the animals because they don't fit with the size we have now. What about this? This is it's called the saber-toothed tiger, which had a much longer life expectancy than current tigers, which is why those fangs grew out of this jaw. Many people think that those big animals were reptiles, but some of them have been found with feathers. Well, maybe they were a mixture of lizards with chickens. Looks like a chicken with the mouth of a lizard. Incredible. Maybe there were human production, fabrication, because they knew about genetics. Incredible.
Some evolutionists, in their quest to contradict our reasoning, claim that size does not necessarily imply complexity. Well, for them we have the Microraptor goe. Considered an animal from the age of dinosaurs and less than a meter in size, it has 4 wings, very sharp claws. With this evidence, the evolution of birds flew away from them by the window.
Yes, of course. It flew away from the window. A very developed animal, this bird. Well, we tend to think that men evolved from Neanderthal or other. Let's listen to this.
Therefore, instead of affirming that man has evolved from extinct species such as Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon man, we should affirm that these disappeared species correspond to the involution of the current monkeys. That is, if we want to find where the men come from, we must look for it in Eden, as descendants of the first man and woman, Adam and Eve.
Yeah, it means monkey comes from the monkeys, and men come from the first men, Adam and Eve. we're trying to convince the little monkey that we come from him. This is fake. It can be proven. This is a fact. The real situation is that this man started taking some tools and now today are taking the computer. This is true. This is involution also, because now we're suffering from our backs or the fingers because we need what we call holidays. This is the stage we were created for. And sadly, we are not using that idea of God, and we're using our own idea and living very difficult life. Well, I remember one of my professors at university. He was a medical doctor, and he resigned as a medical doctor to study engineering, and he became very famous and well-known engineer working in the physics in my university. Jose Toa was his name. I remember he proved that the genetical code was a mathematical optimum. It means fits the maximum of information in a minimal space. It proved that it was based in the number number E, and the exponent was the number 20, because 20 was the use that nature make with the 20 amino acids. This is the alphabet, it was mentioned, that God uses. Well, he wasn't a religious man. I asked him if he can give me that paper. Says, yes, of course, go to my apartment. When he was looking for the papers on the closets, he asked me, why, George, you're so interested in these papers? I said, well, because I'm a believer. I believe in the Bible, and I believe that God is perfect. And, well, everything he has done must be perfect. And you have proved that the genetical code is perfect. Wow, says, interesting. Wow, interesting your point of view, says. Okay. And also, he proved beyond any doubt that evolution was impossible. And he presented it in different symposiums, and usually they make a scandal, say, oh, you are against the theory of evolution. They say, no, just showing what I research in my laboratory, nothing else. Because, they can take your credentials if you state that. Look at this. One computer telling another computer, oh no, my friend, humans didn't invent us. We evolved from plastics, wires, and little micro things. Wow, sounds stupid, no? Well, that's we are telling to another human being, that we evolved from nothing, from a bacteria or from a monkey. Look at this. Let's do this exercise.
It is so absurd to think about evolution, that imagine that I give you a bucket with 6 apples inside. What is the chance that you throw them a few meters from you and they will all form a tower without collapsing? It is certainly impossible, isn't it? Even if I give you millions of years to do it. Now, if I allow you to build that apple tower with your hands, how long it will take to you to build the tower? Certainly few minutes. Then, how is it possible that man with all his wisdom and technology cannot make a cell and we are able to insinuate that it was made by itself?
Yeah, can you see? Well, it's impossible. If it cannot be done by itself, you need to intervene. That's why this professor was saying, no, well, you call it God, you call it nature, but it was not done by accident. Somebody intervened here. It was made by some intelligent beings. Well, now they're going to start telling that we were visited by aliens. Well, I remember many things related to this. One of these was, for example, imagine that you are walking in the bush and suddenly you find 10 stones forming a perfect cycle. Well, you know that is not normal. Must somebody have done this? And imagine, and in the middle of those stones, there is fire. Wow, you start looking at the sides because you know that it was not done by itself. Somebody needs to have done it. Yeah, same thing. Imagine you find a computer on the jungle. Wow, you will say, oh, this evolution, it evolved from nothing. No, it's impossible. Well, one cell is far more complex than one computer. Can you imagine that? There is no evolution. There is creation. Look at these evidences. This is a decomposing plesiosaur found in Moore Beach.
Decomposing plesiosaur, Moore Beach, Monterey Bay, California 1925. Neck of approximately 20 feet long. Sardine fishermen often reported seeing gigantic creatures in the Pacific between the years 1920 and 1940.
Maybe those are hidden evidences that will be shown by God in the future. Because the Bible is telling also a prophecy that the day will come when we'll laugh about the scientists that were telling that was no creation. Well, we're close to that. Look at this. This is the kind of plesiosaur found by the Japanese fishing boat in 1977. It measured 32 feet and weighed 4,000 pounds. Very heavy one. It could be a plesiosaur, but you cannot. Many of these things can be denied, maybe, but the evidences are every time more heavy. Look at this one.
This is one of the good pictures of the famous Loch Ness Monster, or named Nessie. It has the appearance of a plesiosaur. Here we see him with his mouth open. Photograph taken from the weirdest stories, amazing things. Selections 1978, page 424. Well, all these images, somehow, can be denied as arguments in our favor.
Yep.
It may be that God is reserving these evidences for a suitable time in the future. But today we have many other scientific facts that cannot be denied. I remember when Jesus himself said if this were silent, the stones would cry out, and surprisingly that is exactly what has happened. Just as many scientists despite the evidence have decided to remain silent, one of them emerged who has made the stones cry out in a concrete way in favor of creation, and not just any type of creation, but confirming exactly what the Bible says, instantaneous creation. Let's see it in the following slides.
Yes. You know, my professor at university, he decided to remain silent because it was so heavy, the people that was promoting evolution, that he decided not to be in conflict with them. But one scientist, Robert Gentry, we will see his book here, is called Creation's Tiny Mystery. It proved that there was instantaneous creation. Yeah, you can read this book and you can buy it even in Amazon or different places. It's very cheap, but a very important book with the proof instantaneous creation. It's called the Creation's Tiny Mystery. It shows that stones that supposed to be created, or the crystals in the stones created but millions of years of little reduction of the temperature, starting from more than 2000 degrees Celsius degrees, it produces crystallization. But in the inside of the crystals, they found this polonium halos that lasted 3 minutes, some of them, or even seconds, some of them. Those are different types. 26, 8 minutes and microseconds. Can you see? 3 minutes is shape of polonium radiohalos.
The following video explains this scientific demonstration on polonium.
Now let's listen to this guy who was he was a believer. He was raised as a believer, but he became a scientist and looking to prove that the Bible was wrong, found the opposite. Now let's see what he found.
Radio halos indicate that the Earth's foundation rocks, the granites, were formed almost instantly. In fact, they are evidence that the granites had to be formed instantly. Scientifically, they cannot be accounted for in any other way.
David Gentry, son of Dr. Robert Gentry and associate in his father's work on creation.
We can demonstrate the principle of polonium radiohalos. Imagine this Alka-Seltzer tablet is a bit of polonium, and this glass of water is a piece of molten granite. I drop the tablet in, and it begins to fizz. Think of these bubbles as the radiation emitted by that bit of polonium embedded in the granite. This fizz will go away in about 30 seconds, and we'll have nothing left but a slightly tangy glass of water. Now, is there any way we could preserve these bubbles as they are? We could try placing the glass in the freezer. The water, of course, would solidify after a while. That's something similar to what evolutionary theory suggests, that molten rock slowly cools to form granite. But as you've already guessed, freezing this glass of Alka-Seltzer wouldn't do any good. The bubbles will have gone long before the water turns to ice. And that's exactly what would have happened to polonium radiation if the granite had slowly cooled. It would have disappeared long before any radiohalos could have been imprinted in the solid rock. If I show you a frozen glass of water with all the fizz of a tablet still intact, like this, you will know that something happened to instantly freeze the water. In this case, we merely froze it instantly in time by a pause of the videotape. Likewise, if we look at a radio halo demonstrated unmistakably to have been produced by a certain kind of polonium, we can know that the granite around it had to be formed instantly.
Yes, instantly. Can you see? That is a proven fact. Nobody could deny. I remember seeing this professor in Nashville, Tennessee, going to a lecturing in the University of Nashville. And many of the geologists there trying to rebuke what he was saying, but they couldn't. He was very well presented, the presentation, and also when they couldn't go against the evidences, they start going against him. When they cannot go against the evidences, they go to against the person, and saying that maybe he was doing this for money. No, the people who organize this meeting says no, it's the opposite. This person, he financed this presentation by himself. Incredible. Okay, keep going. What about the most simple evidences, like the twinkling of the sun? Let's listen to this. It's very important because we cannot have not even 1,000,000 years.
Accurate measurements indicate that the sun is shrinking. If we go back in time, we will discover that 100,000 years ago the sun was twice its current size, quota rate of 0.1% per century, 1.52 meters per hour, and 1,000,000 years ago, the size of the sun has been so large that radiation from it could have made life on Earth impossible.
Incredible. Then we cannot have not even 1,000,000 years of from the existence of the Earth. Not even 1,000,000 of years. How can people talk about hundreds of millions of years or thousands of millions of years? It's impossible. We cannot. The sun will prove it. Look now. What about the magnetic field?
The magnetic field of the Earth. Analysis of information gathered over more than 140 years indicates that the strength of the magnetic field has been progressively weakening each year. Assuming that the magnetic decay has been constant, then just 20,000 years ago the strength of the magnetic field would have been so high that the Earth would have been melted, where no life could have existed in those conditions.
Well, can you see? According to this, we cannot even have 20,000 years of existence. How can people say that we have millions of years? We cannot even have 20,000. Incredible. Look at this now. This is Donald Shittick, one of the top scientists also. Look what he says. Terrestrial atmospheric helium comes from 3 different sources. Radioactive decay of uranium or thorium, which is the most important, because the uranium or thorium are decomposing, are minerals that are not stable, are decomposing with the time, and it releases helium, and this helium is kept on the atmosphere, in the atmosphere. By the other source is driven out by the sun and trapped by the Earth's gravity, and also produced in the upper atmosphere because of the rays coming from the sun and the chemical reaction on the atmosphere. All helium accumulates. Its density does not allow it to overcome Earth's gravity, and helium is very stable, cannot react with anything. That's why it remains. But the accumulated amount is for less than 10,000 years, according with the measurements. Therefore, the Earth cannot be older than that. How can people tell that we have millions of years when we cannot even have 10,000 years? Well, what the Bible says? Exactly that. The Bible says that we have a little more than 6,000 years. Can you see? There is a lot of proven evidences that shows the Bible is truth. The Bible is right, and humans, atheists or evolutionists or common scientists, not the top ones, are wrong. Incredible. There's many other facts. For example, let's talk about comets. Comets cannot be more than 10,000 years old. Why? Because they are reducing the size. Why? Then why people think there are hundreds of millions of years? Meteoric dust accumulated only is equivalent for 1,000 years. If you go to places where there are no disruption, you'll see that the accumulated dust coming from the destruction of meteorites in the atmosphere and is not more than equivalent to 1,000 years, not millions of years. The growth of stalactites and stalagmites that produces because of the rain of acid water dissolve the calcite and produce stalactites and stalagmites. And then some are hanging from the roof of the caves, and some are growing from the floor of the stalagmites. And this growth is not for millions of years. Those are for thousands of years, according with the measurements we have done today. Or snow, accumulation of snow, it can prove how long. For example, there's places where it's always snowing. Well, if we measure the length of this accumulation of snow, it gives you 4,000 years, not for millions of years as expected. Same thing with the moving away from the moon. If we do millions of years, the moon should have been touching the earth because it's moving away at a certain speed. The same thing with the fossils demonstrate the luge, etc. Everywhere you look, you will find the same situation. Incredible. How can people tell that we have millions of years? It's impossible. What about technology? We think that we have the top technology, but what about the people in the past? Maybe they used to have technology also. This is one of my cousins visiting Machu Picchu. Look at this. Incredible. It is not just the complexity at the front, it's also inside, it's in 3D complexity. A lot of degrees of complexity. But I use these pictures also to see if somebody in the audience have the ability of or the gift of archaeology. Do you notice something here, something special? Have a deep look on it, please. Mhm. What about this? Look, can you see? 1, 2. Same thing here. 1, 2. Same thing here. 1, 2. Wow. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Wow. It's a pattern in some of the stone. Maybe they forgot to delete it. As well, maybe those stones were made because maybe they knew about how to dissolve the rock. Wow, there is some history in the Hebrew tradition mentioning that the top hierarchy of the Hebrews, they knew about some special chemical compound that they used to dissolve rock. It was called the shamir, and the shamir was used to mold the rock or dissolve it, and it was kept in secret because it can be used to maybe enter the city, destroying the walls, or maybe to enter to a house and it could be stolen. Then that's why it was kept in secret. But I remember that the Jacob, for example, used to build pillars. Wherever he went, would build a pillar. Maybe he knew some secrets. Maybe he was observing the nature, and there is in nature one of the little birds that make his nest inside the rock, that in the animal channel it appears that this bird take one leaf from the bush tree and extract the nectar of this leaf and put it in the rock and dissolve the rock. Maybe Jacob was observing that. Wow. And he teach his sons how to use it. Like I remember Joseph. Joseph was the great inventor in Egypt who used to be this great Imhotep building those great cities of stone. Ah, maybe he knew about this secret. That's why he knew how to use that leaves of the bush tree to produce this chemical compound that was kept in like soap. Uh, was put in a wooden cloth and in the bucket of lead bucket. That's what to be preserved because it dissolved everything, no? It dissolved the rock. Maybe. Well, technology was very well known on the past. They knew how to use this technology, but was kept secret. Only the Christians in the modern ages they were willing to reveal the secrets to serve the people because of the teaching of Christ. That's the big difference. But today, many people are doing the opposite again. Let's see the following picture. Also, have been found many devices that were from the pre-flood people. For example, these stones with fossils encrusted in the rock. Inside, they found a spark plug. They compared it with the spark plug of the years 1920, but it was very different. They of very precise technology, not like these ones. Incredible. Well, you can ask why the people from the pre-flood were using this kind of spark plug if they didn't have oil, but maybe they use ethanol, alcohol. coming from the plants. Who knows? Look, a family found this hammer, very old one. They kept it for 10 years and they revealed it about just 10 years after, and it became to be pre-flood hammer because of the way it was produced. We cannot do this kind of iron consistently today without bubbles. Today, iron of this quality cannot be produced consistently. It needs zero radiation from the sun, nocive radiation, and also 2 atmospheres of pressure. Incredible. It is a hammer from the pre-flood. This is another picture of it. Look, this container. That's a very interesting one. It was found when they were constructing an hydroelectric power station in the United States. They found this carbonaceous material, which is the most primitive on the continental areas.
Steel container found in Carboniferous rocks at the construction of a hydroelectric power station in the United States. As a result of this finding, some scientists, in order to give a more satisfactory explanation to this, which they consider a mystery, have suggested that this would demonstrate that millions of years ago, we were visited by aliens. Please forgive me, but I can't help but smile at this prodigious suggestion. This is further evidence that there was an intelligent civilization that was wiped out by a universal flood, where many of its artifacts were buried in the so-called Carboniferous era, considered the most primitive continental layer. But, as a result of many similar findings and others considered secret, apart from countless sightings, many people have asked me about our position in relation to UFOs and aliens. The answer is not easy, so I have prepared the following explanatory video.
In relation to UFOs and aliens, many times I have been asked about UFOs and aliens, which is talked about a lot, and although you may not believe it for a long time. In fact, when the ancients witnessed appearances of this nature, they generally attributed them to the action of their deities, something that also includes the same Christians of yesteryear, as can be seen in several of the works of art that they have left us as a legacy. Here, for example, a UFO is clearly seen in the painting The Madonna with Saint Giovannino, painted in the 15th century, where in the upper right part a man appears with his dog observing a UFO. Or the painting of the Baptism of Christ found in Cambridge, England, where a UFO can be seen illuminating the scene. Or the Annunciation painted in 1486 by Carlo Privoli, where there is also a UFO sending a ray of light to the Madonna. We also have the scene of the cross in a cathedral in Georgia, in which can be seen 2 flying objects with faces looking down. And finally, this painting of a monastery in Kosovo, created in the year 1350, where 2 flying machines can be seen, one running away from the other with its pilots, where the one on the right looks back as flying away from his pursuer. Well, going into the modern topic that concerns us, we have to admit that there is a lot of false information or made by, let's say, for creative foes. But it cannot be denied that there are also honest people who have witnessed things that are beyond human understanding, such as very superior technology, spaceship appearances of amazing movements. Here is an example of this, with an event that occurred in Brazil, where a person gets out of his vehicle to film this surprising scene. Some appearances have been clarified later, but others are impressive and inexplicable, due to the maneuvers, dimensions, speeds or behavior. The explanation of these phenomena is not so trivial. We have classified it into 6 categories. 1. That it is false material made by people with a mythomaniac tendency. 2. that these are real technologies, but considered secret and therefore classified. 3. False information intentionally manufactured by some conflicting powers, used for intimidation purposes. 4. Technologies of beings from other worlds created by God, which have not been fallen into sin. 5. Antediluvian technologies, and finally, 6. Satanic deceptions. Let's analyze each of these cases more deeply. One. As we mentioned, there are many supposed evidences that turn out to be invented by mythomaniacs, which perhaps do so by making themselves known or by being pranksters or by seeing how many they manage to deceive. For example, there are plenty of gimmicky fossil photos of giant humans that we've managed to prove were fake. Here we see an example of a photo that went viral on the internet, which some Christians used to confirm some biblical stories, but thank God I was able to show that this photo was false. After I found the original photo that was used to superimpose the enlarged photo of the skeleton of the supposed giant. For the same reason, and since we have the mission of showing the world the biblical truths, we cannot afford to fall into these traps. We have to be very careful. But beware, that sometimes being overly careful can make us reject truths that God does want to reveal. 2. That these are current technologies that are considered secret for their military or business applications. As is the case of airplanes that were not detected by radar, and which are now available for sale, because surely the technology to detect them is already in place. 3. That it is false information intentionally manufactured by some powers in conflict, with the purpose of sending a message to the enemy side telling them that they already have alien technology, facts that frequently happened in the Cold War. Such as the famous case of Roswell that the North American counterintelligence intentionally sent into the hands of the Soviet Union and the subsequent Russian response where a sinister extraterrestrial spaceship was seen. And they simulated that this ship was guarded by Russian soldiers and examined by scientists. 4. That these are technologies of beings from other worlds created by God, who surely have authorization to observe, but evidently not to intervene or manifest themselves openly among us, as is the case with angels. These would be civilizations that have not fallen into sin. Therefore, they are very advanced, but also susceptible to technical flaws. Maybe that explains some real appearances that have forced the participation of celestial beings to hide them in time, which would partially explain the continuing mystery in which these matters are kept. 5. That it is antediluvian technologies, given that it is evident that human beings from before the flood came close to the hand of our Creator, and that they lived in an ideal environment for life. Therefore, they had much greater capabilities than ours. They did not require books, they had a photographic memory, and they had much more time since they lived for more than 900 years, so they could dedicate 100 years to study a profession, and other 100 years to study another. Therefore, many of the archaeological findings that public opinion mistakenly claims to be about extraterrestrial apparatuses, millions of years old, would be nothing more than antediluvian technology that was buried by huge floods and a sea of water caused by the universal flood. Surprising findings that are not only found on our planet, but inexplicably for many have also been found, to my knowledge, on the hidden side of the Moon and perhaps on our neighboring planets. It is already known that the reason for the visit to the Moon that was achieved in the year 1969, apparently there was a deeper purpose than declaring its property. Rather, it was about grab supposedly alien technology, since they had already photographed existing antediluvian archaeological ruins on the dark side of the Moon. The truth is that the antediluvians necessarily had space technology and therefore spaceships, astronauts, and even bases on the Moon. But, as a result of the universal flood that lasted more than a year, unfortunately those who were outside the planet could not return, and if they did, they had no place to land their spaceships. If some remained in the bases established outside planet Earth, they did not have the necessary technical assistance to continue subsisting. 6. That it is satanic deceits to make us believe that we were created by extraterrestrial beings, millions of years ago, and keep scientists distracted with a more powerful explanation than atheism, for the sole purpose of keeping them apart from faith in God and Bible study. The important thing is that we know the biblical truths, and therefore we are less likely to be deceived. But let's not trust ourselves.
Yes, do not trust yourself. Look at this.
This shows that there was an intelligent civilization that was exterminated in the most primitive supposed time. We usually think that there are things man-made that are not found in nature, for example an electric motor, but the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 1 verse 9, "That which has been, is that which is to be, and that which has been done, is that which will be done, and there is no new thing under the sun." In other words, all human inventions are not so. God is the true inventor, He has made everything before. But what about the mentioned electric motor? This is definitively a human invention that is not found in nature, or am I wrong? Let's watch the surprising following video.
Okay. Look at this.
Many species of bacteria propel themselves through their environment by spinning helical motorized flagella. Rhodobacter cells have one flagellum each, whereas E. coli cells have multiple flagella that rotate in bundles. Each flagellum consists of a helical filament that is 20 nanometers wide and up to 15 microns long, and spins on the order of 100 times per second. These animations show a series of schematized and speculative models about how bacterial flagella might function and assemble. Just outside of the cell wall, the filament is connected to a flexible rotating hook. The filament, the hook, and a structure called the basal body, located below the cell's surface, make up the three parts of the flagellum. The basal body consists of a rod and a series of rings embedded in the inner membrane, the peptidoglycan layer, and the outer membrane. Some of the rings make up the flagellar motor, which can be divided into two major parts: the stator, which is attached to the peptidoglycan layer, and as its name implies, remains stationary, and the rotor, which rotates. The motor derives its power from a proton gradient across the membrane. In this example, a high concentration of protons exists outside, and a low concentration exists inside the cell. The protons flow through the interface between two types of proteins, called mote A and mote B, that make up the stator. Mutational studies suggest that a conserved aspartic acid in mote B functions in proton conductance. Each stator contains two mote B proteins, and therefore also contains two of these important aspartic acids. Although the molecular mechanism of rotation is not known, One possible model describes protons moving through the channels in the stators and binding to the aspartic acid in the moat B proteins. This binding causes a conformational change in moat A proteins, resulting in the first power stroke that moves the rotor incrementally. At the end of the first power stroke, the two protons are released into the cytoplasm. The proton loss causes a second conformational change that drives the second power stroke, once again engaging the rotor. Although the mechanism for motor function is not yet certain, many details of flagellar assembly have been determined. Flagella begin their assembly with structures in the inner membrane. 26 subunits of an integral membrane protein called Fle-F come together in the plasma membrane to form the MS ring. The Fle-G proteins assemble under the MS ring. Fle-G, along with Fle-M and Fle-N proteins, make up the rotor. Flagellar proteins destined to be part of the extracellular portion of the flagellum are exported from the cell by a flagellum-specific export pathway and assembled at the center. Moat A and Moat B form the stationary part of the flagellar motor, the stator. Both are integral membrane proteins, but Moat B is also anchored to the rigid peptidoglycan layer, keeping the stator proteins fixed in place. The subunits of the rod portion of the rotor move up through the hollow cylinder in the assembly, and assisted by cap proteins, build up the rod in a proximal to distal fashion. Another set of rings, called L and P rings, are found in gram-negative bacteria such as E. coli. They penetrate the outer membrane, forming a bearing for the rod. As the rod cap is exposed outside the L ring, it dissociates and is replaced by a hook cap that guides the assembly of the hook proteins. After the hook is assembled, the hook cap dissociates, and a series of junction proteins assemble between the hook and future filaments. Finally, yet another cap is built, and filament proteins assemble. Like the rod and hook proteins, they travel through the hollow channel inside the filament to reach the distal end. The cap rotates, which causes the subunits to build in a helical fashion. A complete filament can consist of 20,000 to 30,000 subunits.
20,000. Incredible. And people think it was done by itself. It's impossible. This is a very heavy technology. If you ask a mechanical engineer, he will know that it cannot be done by itself because a motor needs special devices. Here, you have more than 52 pieces that needs to work together at the same time and very precisely. You cannot make a ring without heavy technology because it needs to be precise. If not, it gets melted, it gets rusted. But in this case, nothing of this happened, and it has many. It's the best way to for a device. You know, we were thinking this is the primary movement, not this is secondary movement. The primary movement is that this is rotating. Incredible. Incredible. Keep going. What about the evidences about the animals species that fit inside the ark? There were enough space inside the ark for those so many animals? Well, let's read what the Bible says, and after we'll see the evidences.
Genesis 7:1-4. And the Lord said to Noah, Take all your family and go into the ark, for you only in this generation have I seen to be upright. Of every clean beast you will take 7 males and 7 females, and of the beasts which are not clean, 2, the male and his female. And of the birds of the air, 7 males and 7 females, so that their seed may still be living on the face of the earth. For after 7 days I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, for the destruction of every living thing which I have made on the face of the earth. In other words, Noah was commanded by the Lord to accommodate inside the ark 2 animals of each species and 14 animals of each clean species. The question is, there was enough space to fit all these animals inside the boat? In the following spreadsheet we will demonstrate that not only there was enough space for all animals, but also 74% of extra space was left. Why?
Yeah, but that's the spreadsheet he mentioned.
In this spreadsheet, that I can share with you if you ask, like all this material we present a detail of all the mother species that are in the world. The lines in red color are the species that, to survive, necessarily needed to be inside the ark. In the following slide you will see a summary of this species. The ark necessarily needed to have enough space to accommodate almost 900,000 different species. Fortunately, most of them, 751,000, the number shown in the first line of this Excel spreadsheet, correspond to insects, which in pairs give us 1,502,000 insects. If we assume that each one of them occupies an average space of 1 cubic centimeter, then we would require a total volume of 1.5 cubic meters. Space that could be distributed, without disturbing, throughout the interior of the boat. Remember that Noah took 120 years to complete the construction of the ark, so the insects must have established their habitats within it, and not necessarily actively, but that also in larvae and eggs. That is, insects and spiders did not pose a problem for their transportation. We have the problem in birds, reptiles, amphibians and mainly in mammals. For reasons of time, we will only analyze in detail the space that mammals needed. The last 2 lines show the number of mammals that exist on the planet, 4,000 in total. Also we estimated that approximately 15% of mammals are considered as clean animals, which would surely provide or serve as food for some species that would then change their eating habits to omnivorous or carnivorous. Also, remember that, outside of the ark, aquatic animals were kept in numbers, and somehow from the ark they could perhaps be caught and served as food. So, following divine instructions, instead of a pair, we should count 7 pairs of clean animals. Then, this 15% needs to be multiplied by 14 times. But many of the mammals also live in the sea, such as whales, dolphins, seals, etc. etc. Therefore, we will decrease its quantity by 5%, leaving us with 95% of mammals that we must carry in the ark. We know that the current average space of a land mammal is the size of a cat. Most mammals are very small, mice, squirrels, etc. If we assume that each species fits comfortably in 30% of a cubic meter, that is, to give you the idea, imagine a cat in a cage 1 meter long by more than half a meter wide and high. So, the calculation gives us that a total space requirement for mammals was 4,332 cubic meters. It should also be borne in mind that they did not necessarily have to transport mature and large animals, but intelligently, to save space, they could have carried young and therefore smaller animals, and instead of birds and reptiles they could have carried only their eggs. However, for calculation reasons, we will apply only the original criteria described above, to all the species that needed to go inside the ark. So, we finally reached a required total volume of 12,674 cubic meters. And to calculate the space available inside the ark, we multiply its length, 157 meters, by its width, 26 meters, and by its height, 16 meters. Considered as average values, given that, as modern naval engineers do, ships, for their maximum resistance, must respect the proportions of the Fibonacci gold ratio. So, if we decrease this volume by 25%, due to construction requirements, shell, walls, floors, quarters, etc., we would have an available volume of 48,984 cubic meters. In other words, we actually have 74% of extra space that surely was necessary to store food and wax that they would use during the period of more than a year of confinement.
Interesting, no? Look at this. This is one stele that Ron Wyatt and some friends and local people found at the peak of the mountain where the Noah's Ark supposed to land at the first. The same place there is a mosque there, and he took pictures of this stele, and when he reconstructed that pictures, he could notice that there was a boat shape, as you see here, with 8 people inside of the boat and 2 birds and a mountain with the special kind of shape and also a volcano in the area. And this was exactly the place he was looking for, and he assumed that it was the place where the ark landed. But what about the height we have now? Is nearly 9,000 meters, because this place, if we do the calculation, we reach around 2,200 meters, no more than that. Wow, it's a big difference, because something is has changed. Maybe we're wrong in something here. Yes, the Bible says in Genesis chapter 10, verse 25 says, and unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth palag, or divided. The word palag was used in Hebrew, which is close to Peleg. That's why he called it Peleg, because in this day was the earth was palag. It means literally the earth was broken, was divided, like we see here, a big division of the earth, or broken, or split, the best translation. And we have other split here, other here, other here. That means it has been proven fact that it was proposed by a scientist, a German scientist called, I think, Weber, but it was denied, and after his death, they proved that it was right. And it's a proven fact. The Earth was one big continent, and it was divided by a big disaster. The people don't know exactly how it happened, but we can guess how. I will let you know soon. It was called the Pangea, yeah, and they think it happens in millions and millions of years. Even they changed the names of the eras, but it's not true. It happened in a very short period of time. It can be proven fact. I will show you now. This is proven that the continents were together, because we have some proven facts in the fossils. The same fossils you find here in America, South America, are the same one you find in Africa. Same kind of soil and same kind of fossils. And also the shape fits perfect with Antarctica, with India, with Australia. All these continents were together. You find the same fossils and same shape. They were together. And also the continents, it has been proven that are floating on the lithosphere, and the lithosphere is moving, allowing this to be moved, the continent, or separated. And how it happens? Well, most likely it was caused by a fall of a large asteroid or comet that impact, as we know, in maybe the Gulf of Mexico. It's been proven that it's a big hole there. Maybe it was provoked by a large comet or meteorite that impacted this area. That's why it absorbed the movement and the continent start moving very fast, not in millions of years, but in days. It could be days. How it can be this fact proven? What is that? Trap evidence which shows that this happened very quickly, in few days. What is this? You're right. Those are the fangs of mammoth. Very large teeth, no, of the mammoth. And it found in a tropical vegetation. It was eating tropical vegetation. But how come? People say, well, was a polar weather. It can be like Africa, cannot be like a tropical vegetation. What the explanation? It's because it was moved very fast, this continent, to an area where it became a polar area. It couldn't run away, and it's small. Can you see? Because it happened 100 years after the flood. These mammoths were saved because of the Noah's Ark, but they couldn't survive because of it. They couldn't migrate to another area because if it happened in millions of years, they could have moved, but they couldn't do it because it was a sudden destruction. They were trapped. What about the waters, the proportion of waters? We have on Earth, we have 70% of the planet covered by oceans. But 18 times more water below the sea level than the land above it. I mean, this mass here of water is 18 times larger than the mass we have on the continental areas above sea level, which is a big temptation for us. Why? Because many people is using this evidence to maybe assume that there's not a big rain, but the continents, because we know already that the continents are moving, maybe the continents were reducing his height and were drawn in the water, and after the flood it rises again. Well, it's a possible explanation, but it's not what the Bible says. The Bible is mentioning a flood produced by the rain, heavy rain, and the water. We need it. Then we need to do the calculation about how much water we have on Earth if it's possible to produce a flood. Let's say that. Some people try to use these evidences because I remember when I was a young boy at church, many elders were telling me that there was enough water in the atmosphere that could produce a great deluge, a great flood. But when I check on the Britannica encyclopedia, I found something different. And the encyclopedia says in the atmosphere there is 0.001% of water, which is of the water we have on Earth, which is only 13,000 cubic kilometers. That's a big amount, but not enough to produce a flood. If we take this water and we put it on the sea, it raises only less than 3 centimeters, which is not enough amount of water to produce the flood. 3 centimeters is nothing. Let's see, what about this water? We have here on the glaciers and ice a lot of more water. Can you see this is 0.001, but here it was 1.641%, a lot more, 22 millions of cubic kilometers. Wow, if we take all this water and put it on the sea, how much it raises? I did the calculations. myself. And wow, I found that the waters could have been raised in the 54.72 meters. Wow, that's nothing. I cannot produce a flood with this. How much water we need to reach where the ark is now? 81.5% of the volume, the water we have in the whole planet. Wow, to reach just 2,187 meters in height, where the Noah's Ark has been found. Wow, how can we explain this? Let's see the problem more well presented in the next pictures. This is the situation today. We have highest peak today. Everest, for example, is nearly 9,000 meters above sea level. And that's the water we have to produce a flood. 54 meters. Nothing. You cannot produce a flood with that kind of water. What the water needed to produce a flood today is this. More than the water we have on the seas. Wow, it's a big problem. But if we follow the Bible, we will find something different. If we use the instructions given in the Bible, or the narrative from the Bible, we'll find that the mountains were not that high after the flood. They raised because of the tectonic movements, because of this comet impacting the earth. But before that, it was no more than 3,000 meters, the highest mountain. Then, if we calculate that, we're gonna reach, we're gonna need just exactly 100% of the water we have on the seas. Why? Why we assume that? Because when God divided the earth, He doesn't mention the proportions. And when the Bible doesn't mention the proportion, it's because He divided the waters in the similar amounts. I mean, exactly 50% one side and 50% other side. 50% it was put on the seas and 50% was put beyond the atmosphere. Then that was the water that produces the great deluge of flood. 100% of the water we have on the seas today. Okay, let's see. The problem is, where is the water? Because that kind of water is not today visible, because we cannot produce a flood today because we cannot find the water.
Where's the water? If we cannot find the water, then we have a serious problem, since we have shown that, on our planet, there is not enough water to generate a universal flood, capable of covering the mountain peaks of yesteryear. Therefore, if we do not find the answer to this dilemma, our faith in the Bible would be seriously affected. So where could we look for the answer? Does any one of you have any idea? Very good. In the Bible. Of course. There must be the answer. Let's read Genesis chapter 1, verses 2 to 10. The Spirit of God was moving on the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be an expansion in the midst of the waters, and let the waters separate from the waters." And God made the expansion, and separated the waters that were under the expansion, from the waters they were on the expansion. God called the expansion heavens. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters He called seas.
Interesting. God called the expansion heavens, plural, interesting, because there are many kind of chemistry in the heavens. There's some stratosphere, ionosphere, different names. And he called it the earth in singular, one earth, the Pangea, can you see? And also the gathering of waters, he called it seas, plural also, because there was one sea at the north, one sea at the south, one sea maybe at the east, and one sea at the west. That's why he called it seas in plural. Maybe also there were seas inside of the earth, like Mediterranean seas. keep going.
Now let's read Genesis chapter 7 verse 24 and chapter 8 verse 1. And the waters prevailed over the earth for 150 days. God remembered Noah and all the animals and all the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters diminished. That is, originally, when the earth was created, it was completely covered by water, then God divided these waters. We should note that, as a biblical rule, when it is said that something is divided and the proportions are not given, it is because what was divided was done in exactly equal parts. So, half of the waters that covered our planet were put by God above the skies, that is, over the atmosphere, since our atmosphere is made up of different layers, which have different chemical compositions, and therefore different names: troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere or ionosphere and exosphere.
Interesting, yeah?
These waters then covered the entire surface of the earth. But, on the fourth day of creation, when God made the sun, due to their gravitational pull, these waters grouped together on the equator, giving Earth a similar appearance to that found on the planet Saturn, with its ice rings. At the time of the flood, these waters were the ones that rushed onto the earth. That is the reason why it was such a torrential rain, that it lasted 40 days and 40 nights. And obviously, these waters could not diminish, because they had returned to their place of origin, to cover the face of the earth. For that reason, 5 months had passed and the waters did not decrease. Then God remembered Noah, and caused a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters decreased. But we now know that in the atmosphere there is not enough space to maintain these waters, since the atmosphere is capable of containing only 0.001% of the amount of water that is in the entire sea, and if we have twice as much water in it, then it is capable of containing only 0.0005% of its volume. So, God cannot only have evaporated these waters, but He must necessarily have removed them from our planet. Let's see then the following picture.
Wow.
Here we see a beautiful photograph of the Caucasus Mountains in Russia, where we see the famous ice of these mountains along with Comet Hale-Bopp in the distance. Interesting comparison. Remember what the Bible tells us in Genesis. And He made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters diminished. Now look at what Job tells us in chapter 37 verse 10. By the breath of God ice is given, and the breadth of the waters is congealed. Here's the explanation of where the missing water is, and an additional explanation of how comets and asteroids near our system were formed.
Where is the ice then?
Where is the ice then? Job was instructed by God to respond where he had kept his ice deposits. What he finds recorded in chapter 38 verses 22 and 23 of that book. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow, or have you seen the storehouses of the hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war? And in the book of Revelation, chapter 16 verse 21, we are told, and giant hailstones, as heavy as a talent, 100 pounds, fell from the sky on the people, and people reviled and spoke abusively of God for the plague of the hail, because the plague was so very great. Interesting, because we already know where this gigantic deposit should be, and now we also know when God is going to use it and why. Let's take a look to go in search of this gigantic ice deposit. Who knows? Maybe we will be able to find it.
Interesting. Because there is asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, as you can see here. Interesting, very interesting. And here you have a close-up. You see, between Mars and Jupiter. This is the deposit of ice that the Lord has reserved for the day of trouble that we're going to have in the future. Maybe these are going to use to destroy all the satellites or something to avoid the persecution we're going to have. Look, it's just between Mars and Jupiter, but some of them are going in long directions, like this one here, no, like Comet Halley, another one that has a longer period. Very interesting. And the size, the volume, it fits perfectly with the volume we need to feed with the water that is missing. Very interesting. The water we need to provoke the flood at the same size of the seas we have today is very in the same dimension of the water is kept here. And the composition, wow, they said comets is mostly water, more than 80% of water, and the rest is organic material. Wow, in the flood, what was kept floating? Remember, there was the flood coming in, and most of the animals and vegetables were all floating on the top of the sea, or maybe buried down under the mud. That produces the charcoal, produces also the carbonaceous material like oil and petrol. Yeah, but what about the rest? Well, was floating on the seas, animals, people, and also a lot of vegetation, leaves, everything. Wow, it was with the passing of months, 5 months was passing when God started to blow that wind, because he needed to take all this destruction, because if not, the earth was going to be contaminated. Like the people is doing today are taking this organic material from the place where God put it, then they start contaminating the environment. Same situation. That's why God decided to take it out of the planet. Even ammonia, can you see? Ammonia, carbon sulfide, all similar to the composition of organic material we found on Earth. And CO, carbon monoxide, because the lack of oxygen avoid it to be dissolved. And you know what they found, the scientists? They found that the comet has amino acids, which is the composition of proteins. And they say, wow, we know now how the life was brought to the planet through the comets. We laugh again because it was the destruction of organic material that was sent out by the Lord. Incredible. Another explanation we have, but the scientists don't have it. And the size and quantity is similar to the amount we need to find that missing water. And the people and the scientists are very concerned about these comets, because it can be easily that one of those stones come back and hit the earth. And even in Apocalypse, in the book of Revelation, the Bible is mentioning something like that. It could be possible that happen, or maybe something related to spiritual things. I don't know. But normally a different dimension of the fulfillment of prophecies. Maybe we need to study that. But it says it have been studied a lot, since an impact with the earth could be fatal, because it's at a great speed. Well, that's we know that some of these they follow mathematical rules. For example, elliptic orbits or parabolic trajectories or hyperbolic trajectories. All those I could say asteroids or comets. Some will see once and never again, but we need to see his trajectory and calculate how long was gone. Maybe if we use some mathematics, we can calculate it. Maybe they were created after the flood or the same year of the flood. Well, different type of trajectories. Well, this is important because it's repeated every year. Wow, I said, What about if we measure if we extract the information from comet Halley, for example, which we know exactly has been very, very thoroughly studied. What I did it. And comet Halley, I have got information from modern times and also from creation, the dates. In here, we have that 1 year after the flood. I did the calculation once and it was perfect. It was the year 2347 before Christ, or words in Spanish, antes de Cristo, before Christ. And from creation, it was the year 1657 from creation. Sorry. The year of the Christian era was one after Christ, or después de Cristo in Spanish, or the year 4004 from creation. It was a mistake because Jesus Christ was exactly born 4000 from creation. The monk that was asked to calculate this did a mistake. That's why we have a 4-year mistake in our current calendar. Well, the last passing of Comet Halley was in 1986, after Christ, this modern era, or the year 5989. The average period, God is giving us a hand, is exactly 76 years, according with the relative movement to the sun, not to us, because sometimes we can be closer and or far away. But if I said, well, if I do this calculation and it gives me an exact number without decimals, it will prove that the Halley was created on the flood, or maybe it was passing at the same time. But what is the chance to have that? 1/76. If this, it seems like we have 76 balls, and all are red, but one is green. We put the hand and we take just the green. That's the chance. 71 over 76. Well, I did the calculation. I put 2347 plus 1986, the year when it passes, less 1, because from the preview to the modern era, and after it didn't pass through the number 0. There's a not 0 year. There's a less 1 or minus 1 or 1 after Christ. Then we need to rest the number 1. And I did the division here, divided by 76, and it gave me exactly 77 interior number. Perfect, without decimals. Wow, I said, this can be used with the other comets and prove it, that those comets were made by God to take the water from the earth exactly on the year, this year of the flood. Wow. I did the calculation for many other asteroids. The best result is for asteroids with clean trajectories, because they're not moved of the trajectory. Then I did from some areas with 148 comets, and I found that 74% of coincidence, 74% of coincidence with an range and this inclination. Wow, maybe I need the help of one I could say mathematical in astronomist to help me in these calculations. But it's incredible. There is mathematical evidences that those comets were created by God. Okay, to finalize, we're going to do a summary of the situation of the flood. Let's review how was the water taken out. First thing, that was the situation the first day of creation. You remember all the planet was surrounded by water, no continents. But the Spirit of God was moving across the water, and and God decided to do the first day to separate the waters, and He created an atmosphere perfect to support life, with one continent surrounded by seas, one continent, and a protective layer that stopped the nocive radiation to enter into the earth. That's why we were living longer and without genetic damage. And also, there's one more rain, was a mist that was coming out or above the earth and irrigating the earth. It was very important to have that. You know why? Because there are some salts, as I told you in the descriptions, and the salts are important for life. Then there was no raining, then the salts were kept in the same place. Just moisture, put some water, but not dissolving the salts, giving enough water for the plants to absorb it. Interesting, because there are many proofs related to agronomy. I can tell you in another series. It's very important because if we just simulate the conditions before the flood, you get the best result in agronomy. Incredible. We're not evolving. We need to go back. Like a similar situation, it happens with the, those, we need a double atmosphere, and in these chambers they build to make more pressure in the body, to make my cells to recover faster. That's why, because they simulate the condition before the flood. If they do, that means if there's no evolution, because we are not adjusted to this kind of conditions. We were created by the conditions before the flood, not after the flood. Big change. Okay, then what happened? That this water, which was above the heavens or above the atmosphere, fell down, and the earth was again surrounded by water, because that was the situation before the flood and before the creation. Then that's why the water couldn't be diminished. Then God needed to intervene again and took the water and created the comets, which are in his deposit between Mars and Jupiter. This is the situation after the flood and the division of the continents. Then one of those comets impacted the Earth and divided the Earth. That's why we have different continents today. And it was a fast process, not a slow process. And today, the rays coming from the sun, the nocive rays coming from the sun, are giving us, impacting the earth and producing heavy damage to our life expectancy and many other situations that are unpleasant for us. Reason why we are living less than the pre-flood people. Okay, it's understood? Well, now I'm gonna give you a big short summary of the discoveries of Ronald Wyatt, who is the true Indiana Jones, not Harrison Ford as you see in the movies. He was an actor. That the real one is Ronald Wyatt. We're gonna see some of the discoveries in the next presentations, like Noah's Ark, finally found. Even there is a center for visitors, Noah's Ark and the visitor centers. Here you see the Ark, very well preserved, but even it was recognized by the authorities in Turkey. But why is not many visitors going there? We need to do something about. We'll see the presentation. Even Here you have some wood from Noah's Ark. I have the chance to have it myself.
A wood piece of Noah's Ark, Mary Nell and George Flefel in Nashville, Tennessee. Here we are taking, from Mary Nell's car, a specimen of petrified wood, extracted from the site of Noah's Ark in Turkey. This was found next to the Ark, about 2 meters underground. It is clearly seen that both sides were protected with a layer of pitch, both inside and outside, which coincides with the biblical account. On that side the surface looks more damaged, surely due to the effect of the years. At this edge it can be seen how the pitch drained, indicating that this perhaps corresponded to a wooden end. In this cut you can see that this wood was made with different layers, as laminated wood is made today. This shows that it is man-made wood, and laminated, a type of wood where the different layers are joined with a special glue. Mary Nell believes that on this side it can be seen that the excess glue drained. But I think it is the runoff of the external pitch. Since I used to be in charge of a door factory, where we manufactured laminated wood panels, and the truth is that the glue does not run off in such a copious way, but the pitch, that in this case crystallized over the years. It has been made several cuts for analysis, and that is the reason why the lines of union of the laminated wood are clearly appreciated. And something interesting is the different density of the woods that were used, where the interior wood is much denser than the exterior wood. This shows a great technological mastery to achieve maximum resistance and flexibility of the wooden assembly. The different internal structures of the types of wood used are clearly appreciated.
Incredible, huh? Well, we'll see this presentation when we see Noah's Ark. Look, Sodom and Gomorrah. Look, looks like a castle there. Wow. You will see a very nice presentation talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. Oh, this guy was a guide of the Holy Land, and I hired his service. And when I found it with those American girls, they were with me looking for the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah. Even they didn't know they were living there. They didn't know about it. He's a guide. He's a guide, tourist guide in the Holy Land. And when I said, I found one, the sulfur balls, he went running to see it, and he says, he shout a loud voice saying, "Then the Bible is truth." Oh, I look at him by my eye, and I felt some of big joy coming out from my heart, because I knew that this person was going to believe the Bible. I'm gonna see him in heaven, I said. The Red Sea crossing. This is one of the gold-covered wheel of one of the main chariots. I mean, the chariot used by the princes, or maybe by the royal family, or maybe by the priests. And the place where the Red Sea crossing took was not in the Gulf of Suez. The crossing site was in the Gulf of Aqaba, according with the Bible, not with the tradition. Remember, tradition always goes to the wrong spots. Mount Sinai, you will have a beautiful presentation related to this. It's already prepared. Also, the great rock of Horeb. You have a beautiful presentation with that. We got beautiful music. You will enjoy it very much. The walls and the city, the Mount Sinai was protected by the authority of the Saudi Arabian government. Well, what about the crucifixion hill? Is found. The the skull face, the skull shape in the mountain. Mount of Moriah, and the tomb, Jesus Christ's tomb, proven. There's more than 20 evidences. We will see that presentation also. Here's the Jesus Christ tomb. I'm pointing to this special nail of iron rod that was put there to avoid the disciples to steal the body of Jesus Christ. Some more evidences, as you can see there. This is the grave of Jesus Christ. There is some very interesting evidence there. Very good one. This is scientist proof. What about the Ark of the Covenant? There is a lot we can talk about. What about also the crucifixion hill? The early Christian built a special place, a special church there. And something related to the blood of Jesus Christ is a very strong proof that will be shown at due time for the scientists not to be able to deny that Jesus Christ indeed is the Son of God. This is my book in Spanish. I'm working to translate it to English. It's called The Ark of the Covenant. I used the picture that one of my friends gave it to me. This is one of my best friends, Jonathan Gray. And I put all the cross of Christ there because it fulfills the exact prophecy about the Lamb of God. That's going to be his blood anointing the most holy place of the Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat. What about the tombs of Bethlehem? Well, Bethlehem, you need to follow the star to see if we can find something there. Well, in my childhood, I used to live there in Bethlehem. Look, these are the Solomon pools close to Bethlehem. This is the David well, which produces very nice taste water. As King David said at one moment, he wanted to be able to drink of that water. What about the Bethlehem special findings? What about the tomb of Rachel's tomb? Well, I will show you that. Those have revealed that to me. That's incredible. Okay.
Then, our mission is Isaiah 48 verse 6. All this has come to your ears and you have seen it, will you not declare it? I am now making clear new things, even secret things, of which you have not known.
Incredible. What is your mission now? Is to share this information with the people that for them it's hard to believe. They need a little push. Okay, thank you, my friends. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and wish you the best. And we'll be in touch and with the future presentation. Thank you again.